And welcome back to another tutorial about the Korg PA5X. In this tutorial we are going to take a look at how we can improve the sound of old MIDI files by revoicing them and using effects on them. This is a very easy process to do on the Korg PA5X, and with thousands of MIDI files out there we can get a lot of songs on our PA5X to practice our parts with it or just have fun playing along with them. In this video I will give you some tips how you can easily use MIDI files to learn complex chords or solos, and how to quickly set repeat parts in MIDI files to practice along. For this tutorial we are going to use a MIDI file of the song September from Earth, Wind & Fire. So let's start with the first stage, which is revoicing the MIDI file. Now when you have added MIDI files to your USB stick or your internal Korg disk drive, you can download MIDI files for free on the internet by searching them on Google, or you can buy them at various stores if you want better quality MIDI files. And we have to load them in the Korg PA5X. And how do you do that? Well, you press the player 1 icon on the screen and you see a section called Song. If you press that one, then you get your discs that are in the PA5X. I have a lot of them, you have probably less of them. And on the Korg disk I've added two files in the tutorial section. The song September from Earth, Wind & Fire and Queen, The Show Must Go On, which is a karaoke file, but that's can also be used in the same way as a MIDI file. So let's load the file September, and it's loaded now in the first player. So if you listen to it, you will hear a standard MIDI file just like you know them from the 80s or 90s when you have the sound canvas. It doesn't sound bad, but it sounds flat. There's almost no stereo spread, it's not dynamic, and we want to improve that. So how do you do that? Well, on the Korg PA5X that's really easy to do. We are going to load in player 2 the same MIDI file so that we can compare them when we do our modifications in player 1. So load the same one in player 2. So now we have the same MIDI file in the first player and in the second player, and we are going to revoice the first player. So how is that revoice process going? Now you see over here the number 11 in that section over here. And we need to set it to 1, so it has to be on the beginning of your MIDI file, and you can do that by pressing this button next to the play button. So it's now at the beginning, and when you press the mixer tab, you see all the sounds assigned to that specific MIDI file. They all have the code GM behind it, General MIDI. So these are generic sounds that works on every keyboard. So these aren't the best quality kind of sounds, so we are going to change them with the sounds from the Korg PA5X. So how do you do that? Well, we see that we have a bright piano, a fretless bass, a steel guitar, so we are just going to select similar sounds from the factory settings or the legacy settings from in the sound section of the Korg PA5X. So let's start with the bright piano. And I like to do this by playing along with them. You can see the activity of each track by the highlighted yellow markers beneath them. So track 1, 3, 6 and 8 are playing, 7 also. So first let's change this piano. It's a bright piano, so let's do that. We go to the factory set piano, and it's a bright dry piano. So let's use the Italian Grand Dry for that. So now we change that one. Let's change the bass sound. Press it, go to the factory, bass, and select one of the sounds, fretless bass. We select fretless bass 4 for this. Yeah, that's good. You can also try out different kind of sounds. So you hear one that you like. We do the same for the steel guitar. Go to the guitar section. It's on steel guitar in the GM section. Press the factory. Let's go to the guitar section, and we are using a similar steel guitar, so let's listen how it sounds. If we solo it, it's a little bit bright, so if we are going to the factory sound, This one sounds the most like it, Steel Guitar 4, so let's use that one. So the nylon guitar on track 4 is most of the time track 4 is the melody track, so ignore this one and set that one to mute for now. The electric piano, well, let's use the default electric piano for that, the MK Stage 1 for instance. For the slap bass DM, let's use a slap bass in the bass category. Let's see if we can find one. Yeah, there isn't really one slap bass suited for this, so let's look in the Legacy series. And we see the slap bass 2 for this, and slap bass 2 looks a lot like the general MIDI file bass, but you can audition them yourself to see if it's okay. We have an overdrive guitar. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, let's change that one. Go to the factory. Yeah, let's use a Les Paul for that. I like this one, sound better. Yeah. And we have the drum kit, and the drum kit is a standard MIDI kit. Well, let's use one from the factory. And we are going to use the PopKit Pro. It sounds more stereo spread and more dynamic, and we are going to do tricks on it later so that it even sounds better. And we have to set the brass section also. Click that one, and I have a favorite for that, the brass of power on page 2. The trumpets and saxophones and trombones are really important, so let's change them too. Let's use some default ones. The trumpets 1, something like this. Alto sax. Go to the factory, saxophone. Well, something like this. Trombone. Factory. Let's use one of the trombones. So we've changed a lot now, and we are done with the revoicing. It sounds a lot better already, but how can you check that? Well, we've loaded the old version in the player 2. So if we are going to set them both to the beginning and we hold the shift button and press play, now we can switch easily between two versions at the same time, so we can select the things that we changed. So a lot better, and maybe that some of you think that the second one sounds better. Well, the second one is louder, and most people think louder sounds are better than soft sounds, but we are going to compensate for that in the next part. So we have done the revoicing now for the first song, so we have to save the song with a specific name. So let's select Save Song, and let's name it QR September, and we are going to save that. Well, in this case I'm going to save it next to the old one. Saving. So, and that's really important. Save often, because otherwise your work can be lost if you make a mistake. So now we have two versions, the September with my own revoicing sounds, and the old one, September. So now comes the most important part. We have to make it sound better than the old one, and we can do that by adding effects and do some EQ and limiting on this new file. The best way to do this is to do this in the Rec Edit song edit mode. From now on, it's not allowed to touch the keys anymore, and you have to set it to the first position by pressing this button. And if you press the menu button and go to the Mixer FX tab, then we are in the programming environment for this specific song. So first let's add some basic limiting and some basic EQing. And set this ratio to 2:0 and the threshold to -20. The gain adjust is way too loud, set that to, well, +3 or 2. And set +3 for the high EQ, low mid also +3, and +1 for the low area. If you listen to it now, you hear that it's much fresher and it has more power than when we don't use these kind of things. So if we delete it, it sounds flat again. And add some spice to it. So these are nice general settings to use on most files, and in one of the future tutorials I will explain how to do a lot more with this section by explaining how all these kind of things work, because you can do a lot of things extra to them, like these kind of things, the way the filters work. The limiter has a huge impact on your songs and sounds, so there's a lot to learn in this section alone, but it's not part of this tutorial. Use these generic sections for now and you're good to go. Then we have the sounds that we are using, and most of the time by adding 2 effects on them for the bass sound and for the drums, you can make a huge impact on your specific sound. So let me give an example for that. So first let's change the fretless bass sound, and we are going to add an insert FX into them. So press the insert FX button, and in section A we say, hey, we want to add a amplifier, and we select the bass amp plus cab. So now we have the cabinet and we have some extra definitions for the bass. So let's listen to it. Yeah, that's fine. That's a good thing. Don't make any modifications yet. We are going to do that later. And on track 10, the drums, we are going to add a stereo compressor. So if you listen to the drums in the dynamics tab, you'll hear this specific sound. Much okay, so that's basically all you have to do, and we are pressing save song. We're saving. So now we've added the 2 effects to them in the song mode, and the only thing we have to do now is to modify it to our liking. So first let's start with the drums, and let's skip section. So let's lower the sensitivity. Yeah, that's good enough. It was this, and you hear the difference now. Liveless drums, let's add it. Yes, and it looks like a live drummer is playing now along with it. Let's do the same for the bass sound. Let's add a little bit more bass. Let's lower the presses a little bit. Let's add the volume a little bit. Yeah, that's a nice part of it. So that's basically all there is to it, and let's compare it now to the original one. This was the original one. This is the new one. And the new one. old one. And here the stereo spread, the dynamics, how much better it sounds. So now we can play the melody parts ourselves. Just mute channel 4. And now we are having to play it ourselves. Now, so something that is really nice is that you can see what you have to play. On track 4 we have the melody element. So if you press the score button, you see that you can select the channel which you want to learn. And it's basically on track 4 is the melody track, and this one also contains the text, so that's nice. And you see the notes over here for the melody track that you have to play. So it's very easy to play now along with the track 4 muted with those notes. And if you don't want the note names, just disable this note name. If you are more convenient with reading score sheets, you can disable the lyrics. Well, you can do a lot. So let's see how this works. So that works really well. If you press the lyrics tab, you can see the lyrics only. But the lyrics has to be included in the MIDI file or in the karaoke file. So, and it's nice to practice parts of this. So let's say that you want to practice a part of that. You press the style element marker and you come in the setup of your markers system. And the markers are also added to your buttons. And that makes it really easy to play the song, and you say, hey, start it from the intro. And every time you think, hey, there's a section I want to practice, just press the add button. So let's begin after the intro. And the next section I want to practice, and I just press the add button. And now it starts on 10:01, and I can practice that section. And whenever that loop is finished for my practice section, then I press the add button again. So, and now I've added that new marker too. And we can practice this section. And you also have this light buttons, so if I want to practice section 2 again. And now it automatically goes to the next section. But if you want to practice that part over and over again, just double click it. Now it's yellow blinking, and that means that it will constantly repeat that specific section. And the nice part is I can practice the melody, but I can also practice the piano part. And you see it over here. So a lot of things you can practice, the bass lines, the melodies, the solos that are in there. There's a lot to do only in this September track. And you can do this with any MIDI file, and that's really convenient because you are learning a lot by practicing those parts through this system. And the PA5X gives you all the possibilities to do this. It's that easy to do. So let me give a few examples of MIDI files that I also redid. Let's go to the MIDI file section, and here are several things that I already revoiced. Real Mother for You from Johnny Guitar Watson. And the same applies. You can use the track system to learn the melodies, which you're going to play. So another example, Fields of Gold from Sting. Let me see. So it sounds really nice, and all those sounds are revoiced to voices in the PA5X, so it sounds really nice. Garden Party from Mezzo Forte, absolutely amazing. Also all those PA5X sounds. And when you listen to the original MIDI file, it sounded really flat and not that great, but just by revoicing it, it adds a lot of this. Also a very hard song to learn how to play, and that's where the score system also comes in. You can just select the sounds that you want to learn to play. Very nice. Standard karaoke files, you can revoice them also. Let's see what the melody tag is. Let's use saxophone. So very nice to play along and learn those songs. Ordinary World from Duran Duran, also a really nice song, and it's also very nice to practice your improvisational skills with it. So let's try something like a guitar, a solo guitar on top of it to just to practice with a famous song. and so on and so on. Roof Garden from El Giro. Also very nice to learn this specific electric piano part. You will learn a lot of it on track 1. And it's very easy to see. And you can also slow down the MIDI file and practice it on your own tempo. If you slow it down, then immediately it's much more easy to practice with. You can set it to the correct tempo. Or the melody line. It's so much fun to use MIDI files to do all these kind of things. And of course, you can use styles. Also nice to play. You can play along with backing tracks. But you also have access to MIDI files, so why not use it? And have the most important part of having a keyboard is that you have fun playing with it. And use all the tools that are in there. And you can do a lot. For instance, I could easily add the a cappella vocal to this MIDI file. By adding the a cappella vocal in player 2 and play it in sync. It's all possible. Or adding sample loops to it. You can do a lot. And that's basically the message. Just use whatever you have. This is also a nice example. The show must go on. If you hear the original, this is the original file, MIDI file. That sounds really bad. And this song is one of my favorite songs of Queen. I think it's great. So it's nice to have it on the Korg PA5X itself also. And when we are listening to it. So it sounds now large stereo spread, completely different sounds, same MIDI file, different kind of drums. It's really nice, and of course we have the scores and the song text in there. So nice. And last one, yeah, that's of course a classic. Also completely revoiced. So, and here the melody track is still in there. If you want to quickly mute it, just press on marker 4 on Matrix 4 before button. You can also assign a melody mute to it. That is also possible. If you go to the main and you press button 8, it will also mute the melody track of the MIDI file. That's also a possibility. So whatever you prefer. I really like this MIDI file. So a few examples of what you can do with MIDI files. Well, at first they don't sound really good, but if you do the tricks that I showed you, then you can really improve the sound quality of the MIDI files. So I hope this helps, and have fun trying it out yourself. So that's it for now, and hope to see you again in the next tutorial.